Allow me to preface this video by saying, on the whole, there is a lot to like about Iron Man 3. It is by no stretch a bad film. It's got some terrific action sequences, fantastic cast performances all round, and some genuinely funny moments. If you'd like to hear more about that, my spoiler-free review can be found here. All that aside, Iron Man 3 does have its missteps that hold this film back from being a truly classic comic book movie. Now, I'm aware that it's easy to stand back and criticize a project that a lot of creative input and genuine talent went into. And perhaps it would be more constructive to offer ways in which to improve the franchise. However, I'll save that for another day. This is all about what perhaps is not sitting right with people about Iron Man 3. Iron Man Extremis is a fantastic comic book story arc that examines what makes Tony Stark the man he is, and has him pitted against a neo-Nazi psychopath injected with a serum that enhances his strength and speed to the point where he can easily liquefy Tony Stark whilst he's still wearing his armor. Tony Stark realizes he's lost the arms race and must take drastic action in order to stop this man killing his way across the country. Iron Man 3 only borrows elements from this storyline and slaps them together haphazardly. What's great about the comic is that it pits Tony against a villain unlike he's faced in the past. This is no technological genius or rival businessman or guy who is a dragon. He's simply a crazy person who can easily outmatch Iron Man. Iron Man 3 has the Extremis formula given to a dozen, possibly hundreds of people, each with identical abilities. Aldrich Killian has the same abilities as whoever this is, which is a dull and uninspiring use of a terrific plot point. Without elaborating further, go grab yourself a copy of Iron Man Extremis if you haven't already, and you can see for yourself the storytelling opportunities that are missed. Jesus, where do I start? Okay, probably the most common complaint concerning this film was the perceived handling or mishandling of the Mandarin. It's safe to assume that no one saw the twist coming that Ben Kingsley was merely a goofy actor working for Guy Pearce. But just because a twist can't be predicted doesn't make it a satisfying one. It could be said if no one was aware of the comic book history of the Mandarin, then it works. And sure, that's most likely true. But the Mandarin does have a complicated and lengthy history connected with Tony Stark. And the movie just doesn't do this character justice. Having the reveal that Ben Kingsley is an actor and just having Guy Pearce at the end saying, "It is truly I who is the Mandarin," is not enough. His character shares virtually nothing in common with whom he's based on. Not his race, his abilities, his facial hair, none of it. In fact, Aldrich Killian is an entirely different character altogether, pulled from Extremis. A character who sells the Extremis formula at the beginning of the narrative, then immediately kills himself. The Air Force One aerial rescue is the only scene in Iron Man 3 where Tony Stark truly feels like Iron Man. Every other action sequence is him battling in fragments of his armor or operating with a malfunctioning suit. Not necessarily a bad thing, all the action sequences on display here are pretty great. But even in the final confrontation, he's never in a suit for more than a few seconds before it's damaged and he's forced to scutter for another one like a frightened hermit crab. On the topic of his suits, the way they were so easily dispatched made for an unsatisfying and weak use of his armory. It's like they were tissue paper the way they were torn apart by the T-1000 style army and Killian himself. And getting back to that air rescue I mentioned earlier and how it was the only point where he felt like Iron Man, it turned out he wasn't even in the suit. Iron Man 3 does a great job of setting up Tony Stark at the beginning of the movie as a complete mental wreck. He's not sleeping, he's living in a constant state of paranoia and resolving always to have a suit on hand. Coupled with this is an identity crisis that he feels not so super at all without his suits. But then, after multiple panic attacks, the end of the movie rolls around. Gwyneth Paltrow kicks an explosive at Killian or something, I don't really remember, but she probably kills him. Then Tony says something like, "Well, we did it. Now I'm going to explode all my suits." And thus he does. That had me scratching my head for two reasons. When was it that he mentally cured himself? He didn't appear to have that moment of clarity where he decided he didn't need them anymore, so I guess he just got better? Plus, mere seconds ago, he witnessed his arch nemesis survive an exploding Iron Man suit encasing his body. There is the very real possibility that he could have survived a second explosion. No movie character should ever turn their back on a villain's corpse. Michael Myers doesn't keep coming back because someone's keeping an eye on him. And neither is Mike Myers. Yeah, sorry, he's not really relevant to this discussion. So as I mentioned, there are issues with Tony's sudden and seemingly magical fix to his anxiety problems. But I also take issue with the way the story resolves itself. Villain's dead, that's great. That second explosion worked, despite my reservations. Then Happy's out of his coma, okay, all well and good. Not to mention Tony cures Pepper of her Extremis virus totally nonchalantly, making the passing comment that, yeah, I can probably fix that, and true to his word, he totally does. Everything just kind of resets. Nobody really learns anything except Tony learns that he's still Iron Man without the suit. A concluding sentiment that I actually take issue with. Tony Stark in an Iron Man suit can battle Thor. Tony Stark without an Iron Man suit is splattered by Thor. I can see that the filmmakers recognized that this could very well be the final Robert Downey Jr. Iron Man. So they wanted to wipe the slate clean, but having everything go back to the way it was is not a satisfying conclusion. I liken it to the end of The Dark Knight Rises, which on the whole, I did enjoy. But what, Bruce Wayne is just not gonna be Batman now? That's who he really is. And John Blake is gonna look after the city? Is that it? Let me tell you something, if that movie had have run for another 10 minutes, it would have shown John Blake in a bat costume, leaping off a building, not being able to operate that glide cape, landing on his head and neck, and dying. Okay, sorry to be so ranty and critical. At the end of the day, none of this really matters. Iron Man 3, it's okay. That said, what was it that you liked, and what didn't you like about Iron Man 3? Leave a comment below via Twitter at Mr. Sunday Movies, or my Facebook page, which is linked in the description. Thanks everyone, take care. Tricked! This isn't over. In this post-credit scene, I want to talk about Iron Man 3's post-credit scene. I was of the understanding that the Marvel post-credit scenes were in place to tease the introduction of a new character or film. This scene did neither. Just having Bruce Banner chat with Tony Stark is not enough. Aside from not being that funny at all, why couldn't we have a look at Thor the Dark World, or Captain America the Winter Soldier, or Ant-Man, or Guardians of the Galaxy, or the Avengers 2. Don't get me wrong, you can still have your amusing scene. Just include 2, that can work. The Avengers did it, and it worked great. Okay, that's it, I'm done. Now I'm gonna go watch Iron Man 2 in order to appreciate Iron Man 3 just that little bit more.